Hello. Uh, welcome. I just finished Tears of the Kingdom like just 2 weeks ago, and I was thinking it would be really, really cool to do one of these tier lists, to rate all the monsters that have happened. I am planning on doing a dungeon ranking and a boss ranking. I know some of the bosses are on here, um, but for this list specifically, it is just gonna be overworld bosses and normal enemies as they're kind of the difference between awesome to boring. So no bosses are gonna be on here. So no Seas Construct, no Gypto Queen, no Ganon, uh, no Goma, no Mudtalk, or whatever his name is. It will be just enemies. So, and I think this is a really interesting list, as a lot of people have done it, because I honestly believe that a lot of the main problem with Breath of the Wild was there weren't a lot of enemies to fight, and I feel like that was a big shame. And while Tears of the Kingdom definitely fixed on some of those aspects, which we'll go into a little bit later, I did feel like they still didn't fully nab the problem, as I felt like there were too many Bokoblins, Lissafalls, and Moblins. But there were at least some healthy doses of new enemies. So let's get on to what I thought was actually great. So, what we'll be doing from here is basically the best around. It was really good. It was good. And I expected better. And then this is just bad. Just absolute garbage. But we'll just get started with the first one, which is the big construct, which I think was an amazing idea. I was kind of worried when I saw the big constructs. I know they have like a bigger name, but I'm just gonna call them big construct. When I saw the constructs, I was basically thinking, oh, these are just basically bokoblins, uh, but floating now. And I was glad that they added these enemies because these enemies are actually a legit challenge. They have different moves, they have different ways of attacking, and I think it's really cool that they use the fused ability that the player can do, which I think is really cool. So for I know this is called Moldia or Moldon or Molgon or however you pronounce it. The giant worm you find in the Gerudo thing. I never fought it in Breath of the Wild, and I kind of never wanted to. But I did fight it recently, and I thought it was a pretty fun fight, especially since now that you don't have to use bombs to, shoot it in its mouth. Um, I think it was a fun fight. I definitely saw that they added some more moves instead of just it lunging up on you. It was definitely a harder fight than I thought it was gonna be, but I did like it. I think it was a great fight. I honestly wish there was a Moldorm uh, form of it, but that's just me being nitpicky. So the Gyptos I was actually kind of looking forward to because while I don't like the Redeads and Gyptos in general, the fact that they removed their screen was honestly kind of a blessing to me. I was not looking forward to those. Um, and I did think they had some cool potentials. The flying ones and the ones that crawled on the ground fast. I thought those were really fun, and they're one of the few enemies that you actually have to kind of prepare for because they tank physical damage like it's nothing. And I think that's just a really cool idea. But like when you're fighting them, they're pretty boring because all you have to do is after you figure out that you need to use an elemental attack, it's basically shoot and then beat up and then reload, shoot, beat up, repeat. And I don't know. I think they could have done better. I think they should have given the Redeads. Oh, I know they're called Gyptos. The Gyptos some uh far away attacks, like how the Octoroks can do, or like the spewing attack that the flying ones can do. I think this could have been a really cool idea for a cool fight, but I understand why they're like this, but I wish they kind of did them better. Likes I never really enjoyed, so I'm kind of torn between better and come on, you could do better. Um, Mainly because you don't really run into them that much, and mainly they're just used for arrows. But I will say they did have a sledge form, a sledge like in the Zorian thing. By the way, spoilers, obviously, but spoilers. Um, and I thought that was pretty cool. I thought that was a cool fight for and I do likes. I think they're a really cool creature. I do like that how they still eat your stuff, and they reward you with pretty good stuff when you kill them. So even when you waste arrows on them, they still give you some cool stuff. So Octoroks are disappointing. Honestly, I always wanted them to kind of be like the crawling enemies. Basically, I wanted them to be the frog enemies that you find in the depths, but they can shoot projectiles at you. And they're a little more of a threat and not just a one shot tap where you just have to groan and shoot an arrow at them and move on with your life. I wish they were a little more of a challenge, but I can't be too mad. Now, Lionels. I have no need to explain why they're amazing. They're the best things to fight. They are the most fun things to fight. They're the coolest things to fight. I was honestly really hoping we could get another Lionel enemy, but we never got it, so that sucks. But I still think they're awesome, especially when they got glue on them. It's terrifying. They're a lot uh, smaller to find in the open world and a lot more in the depths, and I think that was a cool idea. But I kind of wish they added more depth monsters instead of just repackaging some of the enemies for the depths. But I still love Lionels. The Yiga soldiers, the big ones, really got a power down from their previous incarnations in Breath of the Wild, since they basically two tapped you if you were even prepared. Um, they two tapped you in Breath of the Wild, and now, I mean, they're a threat. They're still fun to fight, but like I found them when I was like really late in the game, so they weren't really much of a challenge. But they are still pretty fun to fight, and they're still cool, and they're still challenging. I do wish they showed up a little bit more, somewhat like how they did in Breath of the Wild when they kind of just randomly appear and they're just like, guess what, MFer, we're fighting now. Because I thought that brought a lot of potential for cool encounters. The reason why is because I remember when I was playing Breath of the Wild, I was fighting a Guardian, and then a Yiga soldier showed up, and I had to fight him plus the Guardian, and I thought that was really cool. Um, so I do like them. They're still awesome. I love their concept. I love their fights. I love their drops. I wish they were a little harder, but besides that, I'm cool. Tree Evils are also just fantastic. The fact that a gigantic tree pops out of the ground and then tries to crush you is dope. These things always give me a jump when I'm just wandering around. They're not particularly the hardest things to fight, but honestly, I love them so much because they're one of the enemies that can just kind of be near an enemy camp, and now you have to fight them plus three other Brick-Goblins. I think these are a really great idea and one of the best new additions to the game. So the Ego Soldiers are still great. They basically have not changed at all from Tears of the Kingdom, but they're still awesome, and I like them. So yeah. Horriblins. Now, these have actually been. I've actually done some digging around the internet regarding how people feel about them, and most people are either thinking that the scariest creatures in the game or the best additions to the game. I'm on the opinion that they are one of the best additions to the game, mainly because they're basically bokoblins, but they're more fun to fight because it's a refresh on the bokoblin. They climb on the caves, they downward strike you, they throw boulders. I honestly wish these guys showed up more in the game because they were so much fun to fight because they're so varied And I think that's a problem with a lot of the enemies in this game is that they don't feel super varied all the time. And the Horriblins were the perfect addition of varied. Keys have been basically the same thing of like, they're good. I'm gonna actually change this to good because let's put them on the top here. Mainly because I think they pose enough threat with their elemental forms, as I'm sure at least someone's gotten hit. Everybody has at least gotten hit by them at least once, and they're really and they drop really good stuff now, and I think that's really cool. I didn't even know that like the eyeballs could like basically be auto track with your arrows. Uh, I think they're really cool. I think they are the perfect enemy to be one shotters. Them to get one shot, not to one shot the player. Uh, I think they're just neat. Lizard Falls. This may kind of surprise some people, but I think they are superb. And the reason why is because Tears of the Kingdom clearly wanted to update the majority of the monsters, the three common ones, so that players who've been playing Breath of the Wild don't just have to refight Lizard Falls, Bokoblins, and Moblins all over again. And I gotta be honest, I think Lizard Falls are the best common enemy to fight. Uh, they are always a delight. They always have varied attacks. They have different intervals. They dodge your attacks. I think they're just the best common enemy, period. For the arrows falls, I think that's what they're called. I think they were pretty disappointing because, oh my gosh, a flying enemy! They should have been so much fun to fight! But no, they just get one shot, and I think, and some people have pointed out that it would be really annoying if these things wouldn't die super quickly if you're in the air. And my counterpoint to that is no, it wouldn't be because they would be a legitimate threat, but they're not a threat. They are only used for story elements where you have to shoot something in the air to collect something. That's it. That's the only useful point they are in the entire story. And I think that's really a shame because they don't hit hard. They're not hard to dodge. I'm sorry if my words are not being very clear. But they're easy. They're not a threat. They're nothing. I don't get why they were added if they aren't going to be more useful, but whatever. I think they should have been better. A lot of wasted potential, but I do I do have a soft spot for them. Uh, Boss Bokoblins, while the Lionels are more fun to fight, I think the Boss Bokoblins are the best addition to the game, just period, just flat out. Because not only are they fun to fight, not only are they varied, but they actually command the Bokoblins around them, making the Bokoblins more of a threat. And they also hit really hard. And while they're not as fun to fight as Lionels, I think the concept of them Bokoblins having a commander is the coolest idea in the game. And it's really fun to watch the Bokoblins follow their boss, uh, watch the big Bokoblin uh, using his horn to command his troops. I think it's really cool, and I'm really glad they added this. I still think the Lionels are better. I'm actually gonna put the Lionels here just so everybody is understandable because Lionels are the OG. They're the best. But Boss Bokoblins are fantastic. Uh, Bokoblins trying to get in. They're the OGs. We've seen them all the time, and I'm so glad that they have been updated because oh my gosh, they would be so boring otherwise. I love how now they collect there's little bokoblin collectors where they collect like food or berries or whatnot. I think that was their best addition besides a few of the extra attacks like the charging attack, which is pretty hard for me. Um, But yeah, good addition. Good update, I should say. This was bad. Like, I thought this would be a really cool fight. Like, imagine basically an updated version of the frog enemies. But now, like, it charges at you. You can't really, like, do a flurry rush on it because that's not really something you could do to a frog. But no, it basically gets hit in one hit, and you collect something that's kind of cool, and then move on. And you barely see these things, and I think that's a super big disappointment. And they're probably worse than they're better than Octo Rocks because Octo Rocks are a staple of the series, and they're basically one tappers as well. But it's really a shame that these things can't be more cool. Uh, I'm not doing bosses. I'll be doing those later in a different video. So remember that. No bosses. Just enemies. And overworld enemies. I think the Siege construct was really cool. The big construct, the captain of constructs. I think they were cool. I don't really have much to say about them because they're not like the most interesting things to fight for me personally. I kind of just avoid them because I don't really want to fight them. Um, but I do think they were cool. I do think they were a cool idea. I believe this is the gigantic frogs in the depths. These things are scary. I think it's super cool that they brought in the bomb in the mouth thing. Um, I've seen videos where they can actually jump to higher places so you can't just cheese them, which is terrifying. This is an overworld boss, so Lionels is still the best common enemy, but for the first overworld boss, sorry, the second overworld boss on our list, third overworld boss on our list, my bad. This is an excellent decision that they did. The Gloom Hands. I'm actually gonna put them on amazing. I'm also gonna switch the C's constructs to um, good because I don't really like fighting them, but I can't deny that they are fun to fight. But going to Gloom Hands, these things are terrifying, and I love that. The only major problem of why they aren't in Supreme and just aren't amazing is because you barely see them. They can stun lock you, and like I've ran into these things like 3 times in my entire campaign, plus the final dungeon, I guess, the final area. Um, Great idea. I love how they did the wall masters. I love wall masters, and I'm really glad they made the wall masters into such a creepy force. I just wish they were more around. Okay, this is the biggest L that the game felt. The Henoxes were absolute jokes because they didn't even do their like covering eyeball thing. They were just easier, and I don't know why. They still drop good stuff. They're still basically the same Henoxes. They're just weaker now, and I don't understand why. Oh well. The frogs I actually really like. One, because they're one of the few enemies you can actually find in the depths that's like original. Two, they drop really good stuff. And three, they at least put up a decent enough fight because if you don't have like the best weapons in the game, they at least take 2 to 3 hits before they die, which is better, which is more than I can say for these three. So I will say that these enemies are fine. They're not great. They could be better. They could be a lot better, but they're okay for what they are. Remember, I'm not doing any bosses, so that also counts for King Gleok, Goma, and Koga, sorry. Um, so yeah, we'll continue. So for the Wizrobes, they're kind of a mixed bag for me because Wizrobes were always the hardest enemies in any Zelda game, and I think they're kind of a joke here. And it's not like their design isn't awesome, and they don't drop really cool stuff like their wands. And it's not like they are not creepy or anything, but they are not that hard to fight. And I just find that to be really disappointing because I remember them to be a legit challenge in Tears of the Kingdom, and now they're not. I wish they were better, but I still like them. So this may be a bit of a weird opinion, but I think Moblins could have been better. Moblins for me have never really been too difficult, and the reason why is because I usually can just smack them at their feet, and they can barely hit me. Like I don't know if anybody's like gone to a Moblin's foot and just smacked him in his legs, and he's swinging his gigantic claymore and isn't able to hit you. I just never really liked that about the Moblin designs. They have added the ability for them to slam their head down on the ground to do another attack. And I really love the fact that they still kept them grabbing the goblins and chucking them at the player. I think that's still awesome. I just wish they were a little more varied, a little more difficult. Like they still hit hard, they can still kill people, and that's fine. It's just like it feels more like when you get killed by them, it's a come on moment more than a ah oh, dang, I got it. I should have been more careful. That's all. For the first story mini boss, I thought this was okay. It wasn't exactly a particularly challenge, and I don't really get why they added this. But for a theoretical point, it looks cool. It was okay. I don't have anything really bad to say about it. It was fine. Um, for the flying Gyptos, I've already praised these things when I was talking about the ordinary Gyptos. I love these things. They're terrifying. I hate them, but they're at least more fun to fight than the ordinary Gyptos. Uh, they're creepy, but I love them for that. They scare me. I don't want to fight them, but I like them. I'm not counting Phantom Ganon for this. I know he is a common enemy after you defeat the Gloom Hands, but I never really liked that. Honestly, I would probably put that in dog shit if I was forced to rank it because I don't like that. I don't like that I have to fight Phantom Ganon. Like, it makes his encounter in Hyrule Castle weaker, and I don't think that was a smart idea. It was cool, but it's not smart from a gameplay perspective. Uh, so going to the last four enemies, I will do a boss ranking video with more flair. Um, but I think the Guardians were cool. I think they were okay. I don't think they were better than Bokoblins because they definitely felt Bokoblin like. But I think they were, even though for Bokoblin copies, I think they were okay. Uh, for the Tatalis, I like them. I think they're okay. I think they're cool. Normal Talisons are cool. I like now that Bokoblins are on top of Talises. I've always found that Ascend is the best way to get on top of the Talises now, but that's always been kind of a janky thing. But I think they're okay. I don't really think they're like a fight anymore after you get your first XP. You know, after you get your hearts to like actually be able to tank it a bit. But I think they're okay. I think they're cool. Uh, I think they're just good for lore for collecting crystals. I don't really think they're that interesting of a fight though. Basically anything below the Talises downwards, I don't think they're interesting to fight. Sorry. Um, I do like choo choos actually quite a lot though. One because they're adorable. Two because they actually hurt you and can be actually a pretty big nuisance. Three, their choo choo things are always useful to collect. And four, did I mention that they're really, really cute? And even in all their elemental forms, I think they're adorable. Um, but yeah, that's my basic opinion on them. And for the last enemy, the little pebble talismans things, I think they are dog shit. Mainly because they they're not a fight. They're just collecting things, and I think that's lame. I all the other enemies. Actually, let me just. These enemies don't put up a fight. These enemies are for collection. This is the worst enemy because at least these two bring collections. All the other enemies, these enemies have cool collections, but they cool collectibles, but they don't have anything really fun to fight. These guys actually put up a fight. Uh, I know some people think like likes put up a challenge. I don't. Talus do put up a fight, but for me, it's just not fun to fight them. It's more fun to collect their crystals at the end. And this is, well, just a cool spectacle fight. And I think that's kind of disappointing how, like, most of the enemies, a good chunk of enemies that we've had, are just not that fun to fight. And because these four, I think, are fun if they were added on top of other enemies, and they have been usually. But I feel like if we do have another Zelda game, I do hope they have more interesting enemies to fight because that, in my opinion, is the best way to have interesting exploration around the world to fight some really interesting enemies. Enemies more like these. If for some reason they go with like Breath of the Wild 3, I really hope they take more inspiration from the Horriblins, the Ega Soldiers, the Tree Evils, the Gypto Flyers, the Medium Constructs, the Boss Bokoblins, the Lizafalls, the Lionels. I really hope they go with more of those stuff. But thank you for watching this video for this long. I will be doing bosses some other time. And I will also be doing the dungeon ranking. I got some thoughts on that. But thank you for watching for the full thing. I hope you enjoy, and I will see you next